Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. As-salatu was-salamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen. Khatamin nabiyyin Abil Qasim Muhammad. وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن يوم الفصل كان ميقاتا يوم ينفخ في الصور فتأتون أفواجا وفتحت السماء فكانت أبوابا وسيرت الجبال فكانت سرابا. صلوات بيجي محمد وآل محمد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I recited verses number 17, 18, 19, and 20 from Surah Naba'a. Inshallah, making progress coming towards the end of this chapter. We're at the midpoint of it. Very important discussions. If you keep the discussions that we had in mind, or you can go as these are being recorded to review and see where we stand, that here, now the discussion turns toward, the hereafter. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, indeed, the day of judgment is an appointed time. The day the trumpet will be blown and you will come in groups. And the sky will be open and become gates, and the mountains will be set moving and become a mirage. So a lot of things which obviously are very difficult for us to comprehend. If Quran hadn't mentioned these things, it would be very difficult for us to even picture these things in our minds. But we find that some of the points that we derive from these ayat is that Qayamah from one aspect is called Yawmul Jam', the place of gathering, because everybody will be brought together on that day. That everybody will come together. And that's why, Yawm Mahshar, or the day when everybody will be gathered, is compared with the day of Arafat. That as you see people in the Maidan of Arafat, that's how everybody will be gathered. So from one aspect, Qayamah is called Yawmul Jam', place of gathering. But in this ayat, from another aspect, it's called Yawmul Fasl. As the ayat says what? Inna yawm al-fasli kana miqata. Indeed, the day of judgment is an appointed time. So, from one aspect is Yawmul Jam', bringing people together. From one aspect is Yawmul Fasl. Fasl means what? Separating or disconnecting. How do you put these two together? The day of separation. Over there was the day of gathering. Here's the day of separation. Since good and bad, or truth and falsehood, will be separated and judged based on the difference. That's why it's called Yawmul Fasl. People will be brought together, so it's called Yawmul Jam'. But because truth and falsehood, haqq and batil, will be differentiated, and they will be separated from one another, it will become clear, and that is the reason it's called Yawmul Fasl. So there isn't any contradiction between the two names of Qayamah that exist. Maintaining ties with relatives, from that aspect we read that day of separation alludes to the severing of social bonds. That over there, all the social bonds that you have over here will not be applicable. Even that between a father and a son. And this strengthens the bonds that join servant to his Lord. That while you are in this life, you have this bond with your children, with your son, with your daughter, with your siblings, with your loved ones, your family. There's nothing wrong with it. In fact, you are commanded to do Silay Rahim. And you are scolded to do Qati Rahim, to sever the ties. It is not accepted. In fact, in 3 places in Quran, Allah sends la'nat on an individual who severs the ties. So that's how important it is. But with this, having bonds over here should not make you oblivious of your bond with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because tomorrow these bonds will be gone. This relationship will not be of any avail. So there is no separation between the Lord and creations in either of the worlds, neither over here nor over there. Now over there, you will not have any relationship with those who have relationship over here. And the ayat of Quran are filled with it. Amir al-Mu'mineen in Nahjul Balagha, he also highlights this aspect when he says, beware of many falsehoods that get mixed with the truth. Yawmul Fasl is going to go ahead and separate haqq from batil, truth from falsehood, evil from goodness. These things will be separated on that day. He said haqq with batil is mamzuj, has been mixed together. And when you have haqq and batil mixing together, that's a very dangerous formula. That's very difficult to discern. That what is haqq? Because at that point, even haqq is gone. When you go ahead and mix haqq and batil together, it's very difficult to even, discern between the two. At that point, even the haqq, that which is the truth, is also lost. Because it's mixed with falsehood. And therefore we see that batil has dissolved the truth as well. We read in Surah Mumtahina as well, where it says, لَن تَنْفَعَكُمْ أَرْحَامُكُمْ وَلَا أَوْلَادُكُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ يَفْصِلُ بَيْنَكُمْ. A lot of time you would say, what's the example of haqq and batil getting mixed together? How do we understand that? How do we put that together? Ayat of Quran, I've been reciting it from before as well, which says, Inna salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar. That indeed salat keeps you away from indecency and evil. So you see a person who prays, and that's haqq, that's truthfulness. But at the same time, you see him do what? Commit indecency and do evil acts. That's haqq and batil mixing together. And there could be many examples of such. That this is where a lot of people will start questioning that there's something wrong with salat. That's the reason I don't pray. Because those who pray, look at what they're doing. That's the reason I don't do this. Because those who do this, look what they're doing. So they start generalizing it based on one or two examples. So when haqq is mixed with batil, and it's difficult to discern between the two, because you and I may not have that ability to discern. Yes, on that day they will be separated. But you and I may not have the ability to discern. Then we go ahead and we stay away from haqq as well sometimes. So this ayat of Surah Mumtahana says, your relatives and children will not avail you on the day of resurrection. He will separate you from one another. This doesn't mean that you shouldn't have relationship in this world and you sever ties. No, that is not allowed either. But keep that in mind, that this relationship that you have today in this world should not be keeping you from having a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because tomorrow that is the only relationship that will matter. None other relationships will be existing at that time. Some of the messages that we can derive from these first couple of ayat is that this world is a prelude to the hereafter. And all these blessings are not in vain. Inna yawm al-fasl kana miqata. That there's an appointed time, a specified time for it. The time for Qayamah is known to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the very beginning. That's why he said, Kana miqata. From the very beginning, he knew that when Qayamah will take place. He hasn't changed that schedule. That schedule is still intact. You and I just don't know. Forget about you and I. Even the prophets, they showed, ignorance about it, saying that we don't know, because that's the knowledge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept it for himself. When Qayamah takes place, the order and the statute of earth and the sky will change. Futihat as-sama, the sky will open. Suyirat al-jibal, the mountains will be in motion. After death, insan will not be left alone or forgotten. No, there's a lot to do with you. In fact, there's more to do with you after your death than there is to do with you while you're still alive. So there'll be a lot happening after your death. There will be a lot of questioning going on over there. There'll be a lot of, saza or jaza that will be happening. There are many places that you have to go through. So there's so much that happens after death, because that's the eternal abode. That is the eternal life. This was, as we remember, we compared it with what? We compared this place to, Mahd, the cradle of a baby, infant or a toddler. And lastly, don't get too attached with your worldly association and connections that you have here. One day everything will be disconnected. The only connection that will remain is that you have established over here with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the word miqat is derived from waqt. It was mivqat. Waw was changed into ya, and so it became miqat. And so it's derived from the word waqt. Waqt means time. And so similar words are used for this purpose. Mi'ad, la yukhliful mi'ad. So from wa'ada, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not go against the wa'ada that He has made. So miqat, you are entering miqat and becoming one. Miqat is also used for that place when you go to Hajj, right? There are different miqat around Makkatul Mukarramah that you can enter through. It depends which direction you're coming from, that miqat is applicable to you. So usually most of us, we go to Medina first, and then we make our way to Makkah from Medina. So therefore the miqat that we have to go through is Dhul Hulayfiyah or Masjid-e-Shajara. Masjid-e-Shajara. That usually you go there, you put on the ihram, you make the niyat, you recite the talbiyah, you perform 2 rakat namaz, mustahab, and then you move forward reciting what? Talbiyah constantly until you reach the boundaries of Makkatul Mukarramah. Then you stop because you have reached the destination, and that's where miqat serves its purpose. You say, well, I don't want to go to miqat. You can't. You have to go to miqat. Miqat is amongst the obligations of embarking on this journey. So we understand miqat from the physical aspect, that it is called miqat, that the place of meeting, for example, where you have set a meeting with your Lord or whatever it is that you are trying to meet, and you embark from there. That's the first, and that's the foundation of the entire Hajj that you're about to perform. So we look at some of the discussions that came under this miqat. The show begins at miqat, as the writer says. At this point, the actor, mankind, must change his clothes. What do? You take off these clothes and you put on this ihram. Why? Because one's attire covers the person as well as his character. Because this libas that I have put on, not only is covering my body, but it's also covering my personality. Because it shows my personality, who I am, because of the kind of libas that I'm wearing. So I may be wearing, for example, a suit. I may be wearing a t-shirt and a pant and jeans, or I may be wearing this aba and qaba and amama. I may be wearing something else. Different libas. One thing is common, they're all covering the bodies. But they're also covering that personality that we are hiding behind this libas. So therefore, this libas covers the person as well as the character. In other words, an individual doesn't wear clothes, but rather clothes cover him. You don't wear it. Clothes have covered you. That's all that's happening. Clothes symbolize pattern, preference, status, and distinction. What kind of libas I'm wearing? Why I'm wearing such a libas, and so on and so forth. That's all it's calling out. The status that I have or the distinction that I have. They create superficial borders which cause separation between people. In most cases, separation between people gives birth to discrimination. So right away, I'll start discriminating based on what I'm wearing. Oh, because I'm wearing this, and so is wearing something less than me, so I'll start separating between me, and I'll sit with only those who are wearing something similar to what I'm wearing. So here we start separating one another, start causing this sort of distinction between ourselves, and lead to discrimination. Furthermore, the concept of I and not we emerges. I this, I that. I is used in the context of my race, my class, my clan, my group, my position, my family, my values. Everything about me. Everything is self-centered about me. It's all because of this libas. That's what this libas is causing me to think that way. And this is just a small example of it. As you go ahead and possess other worldly things, that sort of self-centered mentality comes into play. I this, I that. Not I as a human being. So many borders have been created in our lives. This verse, Inna Yawm al-Fasli, is a reply to the ambiguous answer in the beginning where they say, Kalla saya'lamun. That they will find out. When they say, Amma yatasa'alun, what are they asking about? Kalla saya'lamun. And this is the answer to that. Inna Yawm al-Fasli kana miqata. That day of judgment is the time which we have made this appointment. And therefore you see the concept of ihram came. I want to share a few words in reference to Hajj as well, because in the previous ayat the word thajjaja had come. When we recite وَأَنزَلْنَا مِنَ الْمُؤْصِرَاتِ مَاءً thajjaja, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends down water. So the word thajjaja comes from the root of thajja, which means to flow, because the water flows. It is narrated from Amirul Mu'mineen, Imam al-Muttaqeen, Ali ibn Abi Talib ﷺ, that is, a prophet one day, he gave a sermon on the day of Eid al-Adha. And when he gave the sermon, in which he said, today is the day of Thajj and Ajj. Thajj with Tha and Jim, and Ajj with Ain and Jim. Thajj is the blood of the sacrifice which flows or pours. So whether it was Ma'an Thajjaja, the flowing water, here Rasulullah is saying the blood of the sacrificed animal that flows, that pours out. Therefore anyone who is righteous, the first drop of his sacrifice will serve as kafara for his sins. Just imagine the importance of this Hajj. Did you go to Hajj? Yes, it's very expensive. But the first drop of this sacrifice is going to eliminate all the sins. For no reason, they say, when you come back from Hajj, you're like a newborn child who doesn't have any record of any bad deeds. No, your good deeds are still intact. But all the bad ones, they've been wiped off. And so you're like a newborn. And then the word Hajj means dua. Therefore, make dua in the bargah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by God, in whose possession is the soul of Muhammad, because Prophet is saying this. No one returns from Hajj unless they are forgiven, except someone who has committed a major sin and is persistent on it, vows never to let go of it. So Rasulullah says, make this dua. By God, in whose hand my life is, no one who returns from Hajj except that they are forgiven. And except, obviously, those who have committed major sins. And not just committed once, they are persistent on this major sins. Then obviously there's no forgiveness for such an individual. So we read that how this one act of worship has so much impact that would not be along with, for example, fasting for an entire month or praying for an entire year. That how Hajj takes, maybe 7 or 8 days. You stay there for longer, because you're going there, you want to get settled down. So you go 3 or 4 days in advance, and then you stay 3 or 4 days afterwards. But Hajj itself, it could be done literally in 4 days. You can start it on the 8th of Zil-Hijj. You can do the manasik of Umrah Tamattu, and then you take off the ihram, and then 9th you put on the ihram again for Hajj Tamattu, and then 9th you go to Arafat. So you go there, you spend the day there, then you go to Muzdalifah on the night of it, and then on the day of Eid, which is 10th of Zil-Hijj, you stay in Mina. 11th you stay in Mina. 12th you stay in Mina, you come back, and you perform the 2 tawafs that are remaining on you, and you're done. So it could be literally done in 4 to 5 days. But obviously you're going, traveling all this distance, so you go 4 or 5 days in advance, you stay 4 or 5 days later, you're spending so much money, so you might as well use to go ahead and, sightsee and whatnot. So, that makes sense. So you go for like 12, 15 days. But in fact, it could be done in 5 days. In fact, those people who come locally, let's say people who are coming from Saudi Arabia to perform Hajj, they come on the last possible day they can, so that they don't have to spend too much time over there, because they're not in any sort of jet lag, and they can just, drive into, for example, Makkah, do their manasik, and then get done, and then 13th they're out of there. So, but so much that is associated with this Hajj, there are benefits that are being discussed. That one drop of that animal, which is obligatory upon you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Hajj, the entire chapter says, لَن يَنَالَ اللَّهَ لُحُومُهَا وَلَا دِمَاؤُهَا وَلَكِنْ يَنَالُهُ التَّقْوَى مِنْكُمْ. That blood, that flesh doesn't reach Allah. What reaches is the taqwa from you. And therefore, you don't even sometimes get to sacrifice. Someone else does it on your behalf. And so, we see that just one drop of it is fulfilling the need of removing all of these sins. And the Prophet is saying, make this dua. And he says that nobody leaves that territory to come back home except that they are forgiven of all of their sins, unless they have done, for example, major sins. Why so much emphasis? There's a tradition in one of the books of hadith, Man la yahdurul faqih, hadith number 2245. A person asked from our Holy Prophet that it was obligatory upon him to perform Hajj. But he missed it because of, whatever reason. He was busy with his business or something, and he could not do it. So he was mustati' from wealth, from financial aspect, and from physical aspect. But, he couldn't go. What is it that he can do to make up for the missed Hajj? Rasulullah pointed toward Mount Abu Qubais and said, if you were to give gold as charity in the way of Allah, and it weighted the same amount or same weight as the weight of this mountain. So Prophet pointed towards the mountain, saying the same weight of the mountain, whatever the weight of the mountain is, if you were to give gold as charity in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it will not compensate for the Hajj that you have missed. Just imagine that. The weight of gold, and that too of a mountain, and that too charity in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That will not compensate for the Hajj that you miss. So there's so much emphasis that has been laid upon this. And then this is where we look at our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, who said, إِذَا حَجَّ أَحَدُكُمْ فَلْيَخْتِمْ حَجَّهُ بِزِيَارَتِنَا لِأَنَّ ذَلِكَ مِنْ تَمَامِ الْحَجِّ. He said, if one of you performs Hajj, he should end his Hajj with our ziyarah, as our visitation completes the Hajj. That means your Hajj is not complete. It may be complete from the obligation aspect, but it hasn't reached its maraj. It hasn't reached its kamal. And I give this example of tamam and kamal. There are two words that are used in Arabic. How much time do we have? Tamam and kamal. Tamam means complete, and kamal means perfect, reaching perfection. So when, this masjid started building in 2006, it was finally done in 2010, right? So when it was done in 2010, you say, well, masjid is complete. It was complete, but it wasn't perfect yet. When did it become perfect? When someone stood in it and prayed and did ibadat. Otherwise, this hall could have been there for years to come. And if no one had prayed in it, it would be remaining as, this place is complete. It has been built. From the building aspect, it was ready, but it hadn't reached its kamal yet. It reached its kamal when someone stands in it and performs ibadat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because that's the essence of it. So here you see the difference between tamam and kamal. So your Hajj may be complete when you do all of those acts, but it becomes perfect and it reaches kamal when Imam says, when you come for our ziyarat. If any one of you does Hajj, come for our ziyarah, that will be the kamal of your Hajj. Salawat Biji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Because he said at another place, Tamamul Hajj liqa'ul Imam. Tamamul Hajj, the completion of Hajj is meeting with your Imam. And therefore you go and you meet the Imam. Why? Who's buried there? What is the Imam saying? What is this visitation so important? Who's buried in Baqi? Let's examine. First individual who was buried from the Ahlul Bayt is your second Imam, Imam Hassan al-Mushtaba alayhi salatu wasalam. What do we have in regards to the ziyarat of second Imam? Prophet himself said, Man zara Hasanan kana haqqan alayya an azurahu. Whoever visits Hasan, they have right upon me for me to go ahead and visit them in return. You say, well, if you come to my house, I'll come and visit you. Rasulullah is saying, if you go visit Hasan, I'll come and visit you. And then everyone is mushtaq, is longing for the ziyarat of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Sayyid al-Shuhada, who's warith of all the Anbiya. That means what? That all the Anbiya want to visit Sayyid al-Shuhada. But what was his ravish? What was his daily routine, what was his routine on, especially on Friday nights? He would go visit the grave of his brother Imam Hassan. That's Sayyid al-Shuhada that everyone is trying to visit. He is going to visit his own brother. So Imam Hassan is buried in there. Therefore you understand the importance of Baqi. Number two, your fourth Imam, who's known as Sayyid al-Sajideen, who's known as Zain al-Abideen, who's written a book which is called Zabur Ali Muhammad, Injil Ahlul Bayt, and all of the other attributes that are associated with him. So you go do his ziyarat. You have your fifth Imam, for whom Prophet told Jabir to convey his salam. When Jabir said, how would I recognize him? Rasulullah said, Ismuhu ismi, wa shama'iluhu shama'ili. It's very easy, Jabir. His name is my name, and he possesses the attributes that I possess. And when you see him, convey my salam to him. So Rasulullah is conveying his salam to the fifth Imam. He's also buried over there. And obviously, the muassis and the founder of Fiqh Jafari, none other than our sixth Imam, Imam Jafar al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. There was this story that Ayatollah Wahid narrated. So I'm narrating because he narrated this story. He said, Ayatollah Brojardi, those who have visited Qum, ziyarat of Bibi Masuma Qum, you see that there's Masjid-e-Azam. Between Masjid-e-Azam and the Haram of Bibi Masuma Qum, there's this small place where there's a grave. It stands alone by itself. There are many other graves inside the Haram, but this is its own place. And that's the grave of Ayatollah Brojardi, who was the marja of the entire Shia world back in the 50s. So he was, Taku Tanha, an alone marja of the time. So Ayatollah Wahid is, must have studied under him, so he narrates this story regarding Ayatollah Brojardi. That obviously being an Ayatollah, he studied a lot, therefore he got to that place. And with studying a lot, it involves reading a lot of things. Because when you read a lot, obviously it'll weaken your eyes. And when the eyes are weakened, for an alim of that caliber, if he doesn't have eyes, then obviously he thinks that he's blind. Because, he can't read. He can't do anything. He's not blind, literally he's gone blind because he can't read. But his hands are cut off because he can't read. So Ayatollah Brojardi, he started complaining about, his eyesight becoming weak. And he could barely see due to the extensive reading. And they would always be in pain. He said, and because of that, there would be immense pain once on a trip to Karbala that Ayatollah Brojardi was taking. Via train, he said, when he got to the Iraqi border, from there he took the train, there was this group of people that had come after having performed Hajj. So they were returning back from Hajj, and they boarded the same train as he did, so as he was sitting in. He said some of those people had walked barefoot. This was the custom, and even now a lot of people, when they do their walk from Najaf to Karbala, they walk barefoot. We are just lucky enough to do the walk, let alone walking barefoot. And then people come from Basra, and people come from different places. He said, I was sitting, and obviously I had, very weak eyes, and it was always in pain. And one of the people who had come back from Hajj boarded this train, and he was barefoot. I could see that, there was dirt on his feet. Ayatollah Wahidi is narrating from Ayatollah Brojardi. He said, I bent down and took some of the dirt from between his toes, and I rubbed it on my eyes. He said, by God, from that day on, I did not have any pain in my eyes, and I started seeing better. Now, this is obviously that dirt, any dirt you go ahead and rub, it will not have any effect. And even sometime, we get khaki shifa, you go ahead and do it, it may not happen to you. But this is with this aqidah that he knew that this man, this ordinary person who's coming back from Hajj, must have gone for the ziyarat of Baqi, Jannatul Baqi. And he just takes some of the sand and he rubs it on his eyes. And he himself says that after that, until my death, I could see better without glasses, and there was never any pain in my eyes. Salawat bi Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So we were discussing these ayat in reference to Hajj that came about, and the discussion of Hajj came about, that this verse, Inna Yawm al-Fasli kana miqata, is replied to that ambiguous answer in the beginning of the verse when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in their response, Kalla saya'lamun, they will soon find out. Also, it highlights the fact that Allah gave examples of things which were tangible, earth and mountains, which they can relate to, and then, gave example of Qayamah, which is intangible for them at the moment. They haven't seen it. So it's something that you haven't seen, would have had difficult time understanding. But the fact that he gave examples of things that you have seen and you have witnessed yourself, now when he gives the example of something that you haven't seen, then obviously it will have some sort of credibility. So you build your credibility before you go ahead and point out something which someone would not have any idea, none whatsoever. Inshallah, we'll continue with the tafsir of Surah Naba'a. Wa akhir da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.